Captain Lee Taman stared at the view screen from his chair on the bridge of the research ship, Hanbox Pride. The Helix Nebula stretched out before them like a giant purple and blue cloud in space. Pretty, but boring. They had been out here, for 3 weeks now, looking at old rocks and taking pictures for the Galactic Alliance Science Division. "Captain, we're getting some strange readings from Sector 7, said Kim So-ra from her position at the communication station. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls as she tried to make sense of what the sensors were telling them. Tai-Min turned his chair toward her. "What kind of readings?" "Energy signatures that don't match anything in our database. It's coming from deep inside that asteroid field over there." So-ra pointed to a cluster of floating rocks on the main screen. Park Hae-won looked up from her science station. As the chief science officer, she had seen many strange things in space, but her expression showed real interest. "Captain, those readings are impossible. There shouldn't be any active energy sources in this area. The Alliance marked this whole region as dead space 50 years ago." Taman felt a small spark of excitement. After weeks of routine surveys, maybe they had found something interesting. "Can you get more details?" Hae-won's hands moved over her controls. "The energy pattern is unusual. It's not like anything the Alliance species use. And it's big, Captain. Really big. Whatever is producing this energy has to be massive." The captain stood up and walked to the science station. The numbers on the screen meant nothing to him, but Hae-won's face told him everything. She looked amazed and confused at the same time. "How massive are we talking about?" he asked. "At least 10 kilometers long, maybe more. And Captain, the energy signature suggests it's been there for a very long time. Thousands of years, possibly much longer." So-ra turned in her chair. "Captain, I'm picking up some kind of transmission from that area. It's very weak, but it's definitely artificial, not natural background radiation." Taman felt his pulse quicken. In 50 years of human membership in the Galactic Alliance, they had never found anything this interesting. The other species always got the good assignments, the important discoveries. Humans were given the boring jobs, the routine surveys that nobody else wanted to do. "Can you decode the transmission?" he asked, so She shook her head. "Not yet. It's in a format I've never seen before. But Captain, there's something strange about it. Parts of it sound almost familiar." "Familiar how?" "I can't explain it. Some of the patterns remind me of old Earth languages, but that's impossible. This signal has been broadcasting for thousands of years, long before humans left Earth." Taman walked back to his command chair, thinking. Alliance regulations were clear about unauthorized investigations. They were supposed to report any unusual findings and wait for orders. But he also knew what would happen. The Alliance would send their own teams, probably Veltari or Krex scientists, and humans would be pushed aside again. "Captain," Hae-won said quietly, "we have a choice to make. We can report this and wait for the Alliance to tell us what to do, or we can take a closer look ourselves." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew the risks. Going against Alliance orders could end their careers. But they also knew this might be the chance they had been waiting for, a chance to prove that humans were more than just the newest and weakest members of the galactic community. "How long would it take to reach the asteroid field?" Taman asked. "About 6 hours at full speed," replied the helmsman. Kangdu-Hyun, Tai-Min looked around the bridge. His crew of 12 had been with him for 3 years. They were good people, loyal and smart. They deserved better than endless boring missions in empty space. "Set course for the asteroid field," he said finally. "Full speed." "Captain, are you sure about this?" asked Hae-won. "If the Alliance finds out, then we better find something worth the risk," Taman replied with a smile. The next 6 hours passed slowly. The crew worked to prepare for whatever they might find. So-ra continued trying to decode the strange transmission, while Hae-won ran every scan she could think of. The energy readings grew stronger as they approached the asteroid field. "Captain, I'm getting visual contact," reported Do-hyun from his station. The main screen changed to show the asteroid field up close. Thousands of rocks floated in space, some as small as houses, others as big as cities. But one asteroid stood out from the rest. It was perfectly round and much larger than the others. "That's not natural," whispered Dr. Yoon-mi Young, the ship's engineer. "Look at the surface patterns. Those aren't impact craters or normal rock formations." Tae-min stared at the screen. Mi-young was right. The surface of the large asteroid had lines and shapes that looked almost like they had been carved. They're on purpose. "Hey Won, what are your sensors telling you?" "Captain, that asteroid is hollow, and there's something inside it, something big." Her voice was filled with excitement. "The energy source is definitely coming from inside that rock. Can we get closer?" "I think so, but we'll have to be careful. There are a lot of smaller asteroids around it." Do-hyun guided the ship through the field with skill, avoiding the floating rocks. As they got closer to the large asteroid, more details became visible on the screen. "Captain, look at this," said Sora. "I'm picking up metal signatures from inside the asteroid. And the shape, it's not random, it looks like a ship." Taemin's heart began beating faster. "A ship? How big?" "At least 10 kilometers long, like we thought. Maybe 12. It's huge, Captain. Bigger than anything in the Alliance fleet." "Any signs of life?" "No biological readings, but the energy source is definitely still active. Something is still working inside there." As they circled the asteroid, they found what they were looking for. A large crack in the surface revealed a glimpse of what lay inside. Metal gleamed in the darkness, definitely artificial. But the design didn't look like anything they had seen before. "Captain," Haewon said in a strange voice, "I need to tell you something. This ship, the metal patterns, the design elements, they look human." "That's impossible. Humans have only been in space for a few hundred years." "I know it's impossible, but look at the data. The design philosophy, the way the hull sections are arranged, even the proportions. It all matches. Human engineering principles. But this ship is ancient, Captain. My scans show it's been here for at least 50,000 years." The bridge fell silent again. Everyone stared at the screen, trying to understand what they were seeing. A human ship that was older than human civilization itself. "So, Ra, any luck with that transmission?" "Actually, yes. I've been able to decode part of it. Captain, you're not going to believe this, but sections of it are in ancient Korean. Mixed with other languages I don't recognize, but definitely Korean." Taemin felt the world spinning around him. "Show me." Sora put the audio on the bridge speakers. Strange. Sounds filled the air, but among them, clear as day, were words in an old form of Korean that Sora had studied in school. "It's repeating the same message over and over," she said. "Something about waiting for the children to return, about keeping watch until the builders come home." Taemin sat down heavily in his chair. Everything they thought they knew about human history, about their place in the galaxy, might be wrong. This ship was proof that humans had been in space long before anyone realized. But how was that possible? And why had this knowledge been lost? "Captain, what do we do?" asked Hey-1.Tai-Min. Looked at his crew. They were all staring at him, waiting for orders. He knew that whatever decision he made now would change everything. For them. For humanity. Maybe for the entire galaxy. "We're going aboard that ship," he said finally. "We need to find out what happened here, and we need to find out what it means for humanity." The ancient vessel waited in the darkness, keeping its secrets after 50,000 years of silence. But now, finally, humans had returned to claim their forgotten legacy. 3 days had passed since Captain Lee Tae-min and his crew had boarded the ancient ship. They called it the Eternal Sentinel after finding the name carved into what looked like the bridge. The vessel was beyond anything they had imagined. Corridors, stretched for kilometers, filled with technology that seemed both familiar and impossible. Dr. Yoon-mi Young worked at a control panel that had somehow recognized her human DNA and activated when she touched it. The writing on the screens was in that same mix of ancient Korean and unknown symbols that Sora had been studying. "Captain, I think I'm starting to understand how this works, Mi-young said, her voice echoing in the massive command center. The ship's systems are incredibly advanced, but they're designed to be used by humans. Everything responds to our touch, our voice patterns, even our thoughts in some cases. Park Hae-won looked up from another console where she had been trying to access the ship's memory banks. I've found something, Captain. Historical records. This ship was built by something called the Terran hegemony. According to these files, humans once controlled thousands of star systems. Kim So-ra was working at the communications station, still trying to understand the ship's AI system. Captain, I think I've made contact with the ship's computer. It's been waiting for us, waiting for humans to return. Before Tae-min could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Not the ship's alarms, but the emergency signals from their own vessel, the Hanbok's Pride. Captain, came the voice of helmsman Kang Do-hyun through their communication devices. Alliance ships are approaching, a lot of them. We've got incoming battle cruisers and they're demanding to know what we're doing here. Tae-min cursed under his breath. Someone had reported their location. Maybe the Alliance had been tracking them, or maybe another ship had spotted their energy signatures. Either way, their secret was out. How long until they reach us? He asked. 20 minutes, maybe less. Captain, there are at least 15 ships out there. They're flying Veltari and Krex flags. The captain looked around the ancient bridge. They had barely begun to understand what they had found, and already the Alliance was here to take it away from them. Just like always. So-ra, can you establish communication with the ship's AI? I think so, Captain. It's been trying to talk to us since we activated the systems. Do it. So-ra touched several symbols on her console. The air in the center of the bridge began to shimmer, and suddenly a figure appeared. It looked like a tall human man in strange clothing, but he was made of light and clearly not real. Greetings, children of Terra, the figure said in that same mix of ancient Korean and other languages. I am Guardian Protocol Baekho. I have waited 50,000 cycles for your return. Tae-min stepped forward. You've been waiting for humans? Yes, descendant. The builders of this vessel were your ancestors. The great Terran hegemony ruled the stars when your galaxy was young. I am programmed to serve humanity and protect the knowledge of the builders. What happened to the hegemony? Why don't we remember any of this? The AI's expression grew sad. A great darkness approaches from beyond the galaxy. The builders chose to hide, to appear weak while secretly preparing for the return of the Void Devourers. All memory of the hegemony was wiped from human records to maintain the deception. Before Tae-min could ask more questions, Do-hyun's voice came through the communicators again. Captain, the Alliance fleet is here. They're led by Admiral Veltar Nexus himself. He's demanding you return to your ship immediately and surrender the archaeological site. Hae-won looked at the captain with worry in her eyes. Admiral Nexus was known throughout the Alliance as a hard leader who had no patience for humans or their primitive ways. Guardian Baekho, Tae-min said to the AI, can this ship defend itself? Yes, descendant. The Eternal Sentinel carries weapons that can destroy fleets. But I must warn you, if I activate the defensive systems, there will be no hiding what this ship truly is. Through the ship's sensors, they could see the Alliance fleet taking positions around the asteroid field. The ships looked tiny compared to the ancient Dreadnought, but their weapons were still dangerous. Captain Tae-min, came a cold voice through the communication system. It was Admiral Nexus. You will evacuate that derelict immediately and return to your ship. This site is now under Alliance authority. Tae-min looked at his crew. They had spent their whole lives being told what to do by alien species who thought humans were barely worth notice. Maybe it was time for that to change. Admiral Nexus, Tae-min replied, with respect. This is a human archaeological site. We found it, and we're still studying it. Captain, you forget your place. Humans are junior members of the Alliance. You do not have the authority to claim archaeological sites. You will comply with my orders or face the consequences. The Guardian. AI stepped closer to Tae-min. Descendant, the choice is yours. I can activate the ship's systems and show these aliens what human technology is truly capable of. But once awakened, the Eternal Sentinel cannot be hidden again. Taman thought about all the years of being ignored, dismissed, and treated like children by the other Alliance species. He thought about his crew, good people who deserved better than a life of taking orders from aliens who thought humans were worthless. "Do it," he said quietly. Guardian Beck. Ho nodded and placed his glowing hand on a crystal panel. The ship around them began to change. Lights that had been dim for 50,000 years blazed to life. The deep hum of massive engines filled the air. Throughout the vessel, systems that had been sleeping began to wake up. On the Alliance ships, alarms started blaring as their sensors detected the massive energy surge coming from inside the asteroid. "What's happening over there?" demanded Admiral Nexus. "Captain Taman, respond immediately." But Taman was too amazed to speak. The bridge around him had transformed into something that looked like the command center of a god. Holographic displays showed the positions of every Alliance ship. Weapon systems that he couldn't even begin to understand were coming online. "Captain," whispered Mi Young, "look at the power readings. This ship has more energy output than the entire Alliance home fleet." Outside the asteroid, the Alliance ships began backing away as the ancient vessel's weapon ports opened. Massive guns that had been hidden for millennia emerged from the hull, their targeting systems locking onto the alien vessels. "Admiral Nexus," Taman said into his communicator, his voice now filled with confidence. "I think you need to understand something. This isn't just an archaeological site. This is humanity's heritage. Captain, you're making a terrible mistake. Stand down immediately or we will open fire." Guardian Beko turned to Taman. "The Alliance fleet is charging their weapons. Shall I respond in kind?" Taman looked at the tactical display. 15 Alliance ships against one human dreadnought. A few days ago, he would have surrendered without question. But now he understood that humans had built this incredible machine. His people, his ancestors, had once ruled the galaxy. "Charge weapons," he ordered. The effect was immediate. The Eternal Sentinel's guns powered up with a sound like thunder and energy readings that made the Alliance sensors scream warnings. The alien ship suddenly seemed very small and fragile compared to the awakening giant. "Admiral Nexus," Taman said calmly, "I suggest you reconsider your position. This ship was built by humans 50,000 years ago, and it's designed to protect human interests. I don't want to fight, but I won't surrender what's rightfully ours." For several long minutes, nobody spoke. The Alliance fleet hung in space, weapons charged but not firing. The ancient dreadnought waited patiently, its massive guns trained on the alien vessels. Finally, Admiral Nexus's voice came through the communicator, much quieter than before. "Captain Taman, what are you telling me? This ship is impossible. Humans are a primitive species. Your people were barely using fire when the Alliance was formed. That's what everyone believed, Admiral, but we were wrong. All of us." Guardian Beko stepped forward again. "Admiral of the lesser species," he said, his voice now carrying the authority of ages. "You speak to the inheritors of the Terran hegemony. Your alliance exists only because humanity allows it. We have been watching, waiting, preparing for the return of our ancient enemy." Heywan was reading data from the ship's memory banks, her face pale with amazement. "Captain, there's more, much more. This ship isn't alone. The computer shows dozens of other vessels like this one hidden throughout the galaxy. And bases, Captain. Hidden bases on hundreds of worlds." Sora looked up from her station. "Captain, I'm getting signals from other locations. The activation of this ship has triggered something. Other systems are waking up across the galaxy." Taman felt the weight of history settling on his shoulders. Everything was changing. Humanity's place in the galaxy, their relationship with the Alliance, their understanding of their own past. "Admiral Nexus," he said, "I think we need to talk, but not as a junior species begging for permission. As equals." The ancient dreadnought hung in space, its weapons still charged, waiting for the Admiral's response. Around the galaxy, other sleeping giants were beginning to stir, ready to reclaim humanity's forgotten empire. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Within hours of the Eternal Sentinel's awakening, reports began flooding in from dozens of worlds. Ancient human ruins that had been studied for decades were suddenly active, their dormant systems coming online after millennia of silence. Lieutenant Commander Cho Hyun-woo stood on the observation deck of the orbital station above New Busan, watching in amazement as the planet's surface lit up with energy signatures. What the colonists had always called the ceremonial stones were revealing their true nature. "Sir, you need to see this," called Sergeant Lee Yan-ho from the communications station. "The stones aren't just decorative, they're some kind of sensor, network, and they've been mapping everything that moves in this system for the past 1,000 years. Hyun-woo joined his aide at the control panel. The data streaming up from the planet's surface was incredible. The stone circles that dotted New Busan's continents were actually sophisticated monitoring stations, recording ship movements, energy signatures, and communication patterns throughout this entire sector of space. "How long have they been active?" he asked. "According to this data, they've been working the whole time. We just never knew how to access their information before. But when that big ship activated, it sent out some kind of signal that unlocked all the human archaeological sites." On the capital world of the Alliance, High Chancellor Zephyros paced back and forth in his office, his forearms waving in agitation. Reports kept coming in from across the galaxy, each one more disturbing than the last. "Explain this to me again," he demanded of his intelligence chief, a thin Krex named Kixtal. "How did we miss an entire human empire?" Kixtal's compound eyes flickered with nervous patterns. "Sir, all the evidence suggests that the humans deliberately hid their true history. They made themselves appear primitive, destroyed their own records, and went underground. For 50,000 years they've been watching and waiting while pretending to be a young species." 50,000 years? The Chancellor's voice rose to a shriek. "The Alliance has only existed for 30,000 years. You're telling me that humans are older than our entire civilization?" "That appears to be the case, sir. And there's more bad news. Our long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures at the galaxy's edge. Something big is approaching, and it's not friendly." Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Nam Yoon-ji was working frantically in the archives beneath Seoul. As the planet's leading expert on human colonial history, she had always wondered about the gaps in their records. Now, with access to the awakened systems, those gaps were being filled in ways she had never imagined. "Director Kim, you need to come down here," she called to her supervisor through the intercom. "I've found records of the original colonial missions. They weren't just settlements, Director. They were strategic military installations." Director Kim Jae-won hurried down to the archive level. "What are you talking about, Yoon-ji?" "Look at this data," she said, pointing to holographic displays that filled the room. Every human colony was placed at a strategic location. Jump points, resource nodes, communication relays. The colonies that supposedly failed were actually just switched to hidden mode. They've been operating in secret this whole time. Back, aboard the Eternal Sentinel, Captain Lee Tae-min was learning more about humanity's secret history from Guardian Baek Ho. The AI had been sharing records that painted a picture of a galaxy-spanning empire that had voluntarily erased itself from history. The Terran hegemony controlled over 3,000 star systems at its height, Baek Ho explained as holographic star maps filled the bridge. When our long-range sensors detected the approach of the Void Devourers from outside the galaxy, a decision was made. Rather than flee, humanity chose to hide and prepare. Park Hae-won studied the tactical displays. "You've been preparing for 50,000 years for what exactly?" "The Void Devourers are not like any enemy you have encountered. They consume entire galaxies, turning all matter and energy into fuel for their expansion. They have destroyed dozens of galaxies in their path, and now they have found ours." Kim Sora looked up from her console. "Guardian, I'm detecting those energy signatures the Alliance mentioned. Something is definitely approaching from outside the galaxy. Multiple contacts, moving very fast." Admiral Veltar Nexus, who had been allowed aboard the human ship for negotiations, studied the sensor readings with growing alarm. His purple skin had turned pale, and his multiple eyes showed fear. "How long until they reach the outer systems?" he asked. "At their current speed, approximately 6 months," Baek Ho replied. "But their advanced scouts may arrive sooner. Dr. Yoon-mi Young had been working with the ship's engineering systems, trying to understand the incredible technology around them. Guardian, these weapons, this ship, everything here is far more advanced than anything the Alliance has. Why? Didn't humans reveal this before? Because the Void Devourers adapt to whatever they encounter, the AI explained. If they had detected the hegemony's true power early, they would have prepared countermeasures. The deception was necessary to give us the element of surprise. Admiral Nexus stepped forward. Guardian, with respect, one ship, even one as powerful as this, cannot stand against an entire galactic invasion fleet. Baekho's image smiled. Admiral, who said this was just one ship? The bridge's main display changed to show a galaxy-wide map. Across hundreds of systems, new energy signatures were appearing as hidden bases and sleeping vessels came online. The Eternal Sentinel is one of over 400 dreadnoughts, the AI announced. Each one has been waiting in hidden locations throughout the galaxy, and that is only the beginning. Engineer Kang Do-hyun whistled softly. Captain, look at these power readings. There are entire fleets waking up, hidden shipyards, automated, defense platforms, weapons we can't even identify. On the frontier world of Haven's Rest, Captain Kim Min-ho received an emergency transmission from what he had thought was an abandoned mine shaft. The message was in ancient Korean, calling all humans to report to hidden command centers for immediate military service. Sir, the mining equipment down there isn't mining equipment, reported his chief engineer. It's some kind of massive weapon system. The whole planet is actually a fortress. Similar reports were coming in from across human space. Terraforming. Equipment revealed itself to be military hardware. Mining operations were actually weapon manufacturing centers. Even the human tendency to settle on useless worlds made sense now. Those planets were chosen because they contained hidden military installations. Back on the Eternal Sentinel, the scope of humanity's deception was becoming clear. Every human colony, every trade route, every diplomatic mission for the past 50,000 years has been part of this plan, Baekho explained. Humanity has been secretly guiding the development of the other Alliance species, ensuring they would develop technologies that could be integrated into our defense strategy. Admiral Nexus looked stunned. You've been manipulating us for millennia? Not manipulating, Taemin said carefully. Guiding, helping you become stronger so that when this day came, we could all stand together against the real threat. Haewon was reading through more historical files. Captain, according to these records, human diplomats, traders, and scientists have been sharing carefully selected technologies with the Alliance species for thousands of years, always making it look like the aliens discovered things themselves, but actually leading them toward specific innovations. What kind of innovations? Asked the Admiral. So-Ra brought up a technical display. Veltari psionic amplifiers, Krex quantum computers, Zephyrian energy crystals. All of these technologies were developed with subtle human guidance, and now they can be integrated with human systems to create weapons more powerful than anything the galaxy has ever seen. The communication system activated, bringing a message from Earth. It was Admiral Park Woo-jin, a man who had supposedly died in an exploration accident 50 years ago. All units, this is Admiral Park broadcasting from Hidden Command Alpha. The time of concealment is over. All human military personnel are to report to your assigned vessels immediately. The enemy approaches, and we have a galaxy to defend. Admiral, Nexus looked around the bridge at the humans, seeing them with new eyes. How many of you knew? How many humans were aware of this? Taemin shook his head. Almost none of us. Only a few hundred people in the entire human population knew the truth. The rest of us were kept in the dark to maintain the deception. We're learning about our history at the same time you are. The main display showed the approaching threat. Dozens of massive objects were moving toward the galaxy at incredible speed, their energy signatures unlike anything in the database. Guardian, Admiral Nexus said quietly, "What do we do now?" "Now," Baekho replied. "We prepare for war. The Void Devourers have consumed 17 galaxies, but they have never faced humanity fighting for their home. They have never encountered a species that has spent 50,000 years preparing for this moment. Across the galaxy, the awakening continued. Human fleets emerged from hidden bases, ancient weapons powered up, and the true scope of humanity's secret empire began to reveal itself. The junior species of the Alliance had become its oldest and most powerful protectors. The first Void Devourer scout ships reached the galaxy's edge 3 months ahead of schedule. Captain Kim Minho watched from the bridge of his newly activated Dreadnought Thunder's roar as the enemy vessels consumed entire star systems in minutes. "Sir, they're not just destroying the stars," reported his tactical officer. "They're actually eating them, converting all that matter and energy into something else." Minho studied the sensor readings with growing alarm. Each Void Devourer ship was the size of a small moon, covered in writhing tentacles that reached out to grab chunks of planets and pull them into glowing mouths. Where they passed, nothing remained but empty space. "How many ships are we tracking?" he asked. "Over 200 in this sector alone, sir. And they're moving fast. At this rate, they'll reach the populated systems in weeks, not months." From the hidden fortress world of Mountain's Heart, Admiral Park Woo-jin coordinated humanity's response. He had spent 50 years in cryogenic sleep, waiting for this moment. Now, surrounded by the command staff he had trained decades ago, he watched as the ancient plan finally went into motion. "Status report on fleet activation," he ordered. Chief Engineer COJ Min consulted his displays. 412 dreadnoughts are now online and combat ready. Another 67 are still powering up their main systems. All hidden bases are active, and the automated shipyards have begun producing new vessels. What about the terraforming protocols? 18 fortress worlds have been activated. The planets that looked like failed colonies are now revealed as military strongholds. Each one has enough firepower to destroy a fleet. On the Alliance capital world, panic was spreading as the true scope of the threat became clear. High Chancellor Zephyros had called an emergency session of the Galactic Council, but half the member species were demanding immediate evacuation to another galaxy. "Order! We must have order!" the Chancellor shouted above the noise. "Admiral Kickstal, what is the status of our defense fleet?" The Krex military leader's compound eyes showed deep worry. "Sir, our best projections show that the Alliance fleet cannot stop even the advanced scouts. Our weapons barely damage their hulls, and their defensive systems adapt to our attacks within minutes." "What about the humans? Can they help us?" "That's complicated, sir. It appears that humanity has more ships than the rest of the Alliance combined, but they're demanding equal partnership in all military decisions." The Chancellor's forearms waved in frustration. "Equal partnership? They're still a junior species." "With respect, sir," came a calm voice from the chamber's entrance. That was never really true. Everyone turned to see Captain Lee Tae-min entering the council chamber, followed by Admiral Park Woo-jin. The two humans walked to the center of the room, showing no fear despite being surrounded by aliens who had once commanded their obedience. "Admiral Park," the Chancellor said stiffly, "you were reported dead 50 years ago. I was sleeping, waiting for this day. We all were." Park gestured to include Tae-min. "Chancellor, the time for pretending is over. Humanity has been protecting this galaxy for millennia. Now we need to work together, or everyone dies." In the Outer Rim, the first major battle was beginning. Commander Yu-ji Hai led a mixed fleet of human and Alliance vessels against a Void Devourer assault group. Her frigate Harmony's Edge coordinated the attack while the massive human dreadnoughts moved into position. "All ships, this is Commander Yu," she broadcast. "Remember, their hulls adapt to repeated attacks, switch weapon types frequently, and target their feeding tentacles first." The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human weapons that manipulated time and space struck the enemy ships, while Alliance vessels provided support with their specialized technologies. Feltari psionics disrupted the Devourer's coordination, while Krex quantum computers calculated optimal firing solutions. "Commander, the enemy is adapting faster than expected," reported her tactical officer. "They're learning to counter our weapons in real time." Jihai watched as one of the Devourer ships caught a human torpedo in its tentacles and somehow absorbed the weapon's energy, making itself stronger. All ships. Full retreat. We need a new strategy. But as the fleet pulled back, something unexpected happened. The human dreadnought Storm's End moved forward instead of retreating, its captain apparently ignoring orders. Captain Li Dongwu, return to formation immediately, Jihai ordered. Negative, Commander, I have an idea. All ships, watch and learn. The Storm's End opened fire with every weapon it had, but not at the enemy ships. Instead, it targeted empty space around the Devourers, creating massive explosions that seemed to accomplish nothing. Captain, what are you doing? Jihai demanded. Dimensional mining, Dongwu replied calmly. These things feed on matter and energy from our dimension, but they can't digest energy from other dimensions, and we've been studying dimensional warfare for 50,000 years. The explosions in empty space suddenly made sense. The Storm's End was cracking holes between dimensions, allowing energy from parallel universes to flood into normal space. The Void Devourers, built to consume matter from this reality, couldn't process the foreign energy. Their feeding tentacles withered and their hulls began to crack. All ships target the dimensional ruptures around the enemy vessels, Jihai ordered. Copy the Storm's End's attack pattern. The tide of battle turned quickly. As more human and alliance ships began dimensional bombardment, the Void Devourer assault group found themselves being poisoned by energy they couldn't digest. Within an hour, the entire enemy force was destroyed. But victory came with a price. Long-range sensors showed that the main Void Devourer fleet had detected the battle and was now moving directly toward the galaxy's core at maximum speed. Back on the Eternal Sentinel, Guardian Bekho was updating the senior command staff on the overall strategic situation. The dimensional warfare tactic is effective, but it requires precise coordination between human temporal technology and alliance support systems. The enemy will adapt to this strategy within days, so we must use it while we can. Admiral Park studied the galactic map. How long until their main fleet arrives at the core systems? 6 days, Admiral, and there are over 50,000 ships in their primary assault force. Park Woo-jin felt the weight of 50,000 years of preparation. Everything had led to this moment. Either humanity's plan would work or the galaxy would be consumed like so many others before it. Guardian, activate the Reality Anchor project. It's time to reveal our final secret. Bekho's image flickered with surprise. Admiral, are you certain? Once the anchor is revealed, there can be no going back. The energy requirements will drain every power source in the galaxy. The Void Devourers get their power from somewhere outside our reality, Park said firmly. If we can cut that connection, their entire fleet becomes vulnerable. Begin the activation sequence. Throughout the galaxy, hidden installations began powering up for humanity's ultimate gamble. The Reality Anchor was a weapon 50,000 years in the making, designed to sever the Void Devourer's connection to their extra-dimensional power source. On Alliance worlds, the truth about humanity was finally sinking in. The species they had dismissed as primitive newcomers were actually their ancient protectors, and possibly the only hope for survival. Chief Engineer Seo Jaemin coordinated the technical integration from Mountain's heart, bringing together technologies from every Alliance species. Veltari psionic networks would guide the targeting. Krex quantum computers would handle the calculations. Zephyrian energy crystals would amplify the power flow. And at the center of it all, human temporal manipulation. Technology would reach across dimensions to cut the enemy's lifeline. Admiral Park, reported Sora from her position at the communication center. All species have agreed to the integration protocol. We're as ready as we'll ever be. The main Void Devourer fleet was now visible on long-range sensors, a swarm of dark shapes that blotted out the stars as they approached. At their head was a ship larger than any planet, covered in countless feeding mouths that gaped hungrily at the galaxy ahead. All human fleets, this is Admiral Park, he broadcast across the galaxy. 50,000 years ago, our ancestors made a promise. They swore that humanity would stand guard over the stars and protect all life in this galaxy. Today, we keep that promise. Today, we show the universe what humans are truly capable of. The final battle was about to begin, and with it, the revelation of humanity's greatest secret, the weapon that could save the galaxy or destroy it in the attempt. The final battle began at the galaxy's heart, where the supermassive black hole that held everything together pulsed with unnatural energy. The Void Devourers had surrounded it with their largest ships, preparing to consume the gravitational anchor that kept billions of star systems in stable orbits. Grand Admiral Lee Subin stood on the bridge of her flagship Eternal Dawn, a vessel so massive that entire fleets could dock inside its hangars. She had been sleeping in the deepest vaults for 50,000 years, waiting for this moment. Around her, the combined forces of humanity and the Alliance prepared for the most important battle in galactic history. All ships, this is Grand Admiral Subin, she broadcast across the largest fleet ever assembled. Today we fight not just for our survival, but for the right of all life to exist in this galaxy. The reality anchor is charging. We just need to hold the line until it's ready. Captain Lee Taman, now commanding a squadron of human destroyers, watched as the enemy's largest vessel approached the galactic core. It was like watching a mountain move through space, its countless feeding mouths already reaching toward the black hole with hungry tentacles. All ships focus fire on the big one, he ordered. Don't let it reach the core. The battle erupted across thousands of cubic light years as human dreadnoughts engaged Void Devourer cruisers, while Alliance support ships provided covering fire. The space around the galactic center became a storm of energy beams, explosions, and the writhing forms of dying ships. Engineer Oh Sang-woo worked frantically at the reality anchor control station, deep inside the hidden fortress of Mountain's heart. The weapon was unlike anything ever built, a combination of human temporal technology, Veltari psionic amplifiers, Krex quantum computers, and energy crystals from a dozen different species. Grand Admiral, the anchor will be ready in 30 minutes, he reported. But I'm detecting interference from the enemy flagship. It's somehow jamming our dimensional targeting systems. Subin studied the tactical display. The massive Void Devourer command ship had positioned itself between the reality anchor's targeting sensors and the source of the enemy's power. Without a clear lock on their extra-dimensional energy source, the weapon would be useless. All fleets, new priority target, she ordered. We need to move that flagship away from the galactic core. Everything we have, concentrate fire on the big ship. Captain Kim Min-ho brought his Dreadnought Thunder's roar alongside Admiral Park Woo-jin's flagship. Together, they led the assault on the enemy command vessel, their weapons carving deep wounds in its hull. But the ship was enormous, and its adaptive armor was already learning to resist their attacks. Admiral, we're barely scratching it, Min-ho reported. This thing is too big to destroy with conventional weapons. Park studied his sensor readings. The enemy flagship was indeed massive, but it had one weakness. All those feeding tentacles made it top-heavy and difficult to maneuver. All ships, target the tentacles on the bottom half of that ship, he ordered. Don't try to destroy it, try to make it lose balance. The strategy worked. As human and Alliance weapons severed the creature's lower feeding appendages, the massive ship began to list to one side. Its attempts to correct course only made the problem worse, and slowly, the flagship began drifting away from the galactic core. Targeting lock established, reported Oh Sang-woo. I can see their power source now. Grand Admiral, you're not going to believe this, but they're drawing energy from the deaths of entire galaxies. They're connected to some kind of cosmic graveyard in another dimension. Subin felt sick at the thought. How many galaxies have they destroyed? The energy signature suggests hundreds, maybe thousands over millions of years. Then we end this here, Subin said firmly. Fire the reality anchor. The weapon activated with a sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Reality itself twisted as human temporal technology reached across dimensions, searching for the source of the Void Devourer's power. When it found the connection, a bridge of dark energy stretching into the cosmic graveyard of dead galaxies, it began to cut dot. The effect on the enemy fleet was immediate and dramatic. Ships that had seemed invincible moments before, suddenly, began to weaken as their power source was severed. Their adaptive armor stopped working, their feeding tentacles withered. The massive flagship let out a sound like a dying whale as its connection to the extra-dimensional energy source was permanently Captain Yuji Hai, commanding the escort frigate Harmony's Edge, led the final assault on the crippled enemy fleet. Working alongside alien commanders who now saw humans as equals, she coordinated strikes that finished off the powerless Void Devourer vessels one by one. "All ships, they're retreating," she reported, as the surviving enemy vessels tried to flee. "The galaxy. Their faster-than-light drives are failing, they can't escape." The battle continued for another hour, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Without their extra-dimensional power source, the Void Devourers were just large, slow targets. The combined fleets of humanity and the Alliance systematically destroyed every enemy ship, ensuring that none would survive to threaten other galaxies. When the last Void Devourer vessel exploded in a burst of dying light, silence fell over the fleet. They had done it. After millions of years of consuming galaxies, the threat was finally ended. On the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, Grand Admiral Subin received reports from across the galaxy. The hidden human installations were powering, down from combat status. The Alliance worlds were celebrating, and for the first time in 50,000 years, humanity could stop hiding. "Guardian Backho," she said to the AI projection that had appeared beside her. "The deception is over. What happens now?" The ancient AI smiled. "Now, descendant, humanity takes its rightful place as the galaxy's protectors. The Terran hegemony is reborn, but this time as partners with all the species we have been secretly watching over." 3 months later, Captain Lee Tae-min stood on the bridge of the Eternal Sentinel as it led a joint exploration fleet toward the edge of the galaxy. The ship had been refitted with the best technology from every Alliance species, a symbol of the new cooperation between all galactic civilizations. The old Galactic Alliance had been reformed as the United Galactic Federation, with humanity taking its place as a senior member alongside the Veltari, Kreks, and other ancient species. No longer were humans treated as primitive newcomers. They were recognized as the oldest spacefaring species in the galaxy, the secret guardians who had protected everyone else while appearing weak and helpless. "Captain," reported Sora from her communication station, "we're receiving signals from outside the galaxy. It looks like there are other civilizations out there, and some of them are asking for help against threats similar to the Void Devourers." Taemin smiled. Humanity had spent 50,000 years preparing to defend one galaxy. Now they had the chance to protect others as well. "Set course for the intergalactic void," he ordered. "It's time to see what else is out there." Behind them, the galaxy remained safe under the watchful eyes of the awakened human fleet. Ancient dreadnoughts patrolled the spiral arms while hidden bases continued their eternal vigil. The deception was over, but the responsibility remained. Admiral Park Woo-jin, now serving as the Federation's supreme military commander, watched from his office on the rebuilt world of New Terra as human ships prepared to venture beyond the galaxy's edge. The young species that had once begged for membership in the Alliance were now leading expeditions to help civilizations they had never met. Dr. Park Hae-won, promoted to head of the Galactic Archaeological Service, was uncovering more secrets of humanity's past every day. The true scope of the Terran hegemony was still being revealed as hidden vaults opened across thousands of worlds. And in the deepest archives of Earth, Dr. Nam Eunji worked with Guardian Baek Ho to preserve the complete history of humanity's long deception. Future generations would know the truth about their heritage, how their ancestors had sacrificed their glory and reputation to save the galaxy from an ancient evil. The Eternal Sentinel reached the galaxy's edge and prepared to cross into the unknown. Captain Taemin looked back one last time at the spiral of stars that humanity had protected for so long. "Guardian," he asked, "do you think we'll find more threats out there?" Baekho's image appeared beside him, as it had for 50,000 years. "Perhaps, descendant, but we will also find civilizations worth protecting, species worth saving, and challenges worthy of humanity's strength. Then we'll face them together," Taemin said, looking around at his mixed crew of humans and aliens working side by side, all of us. The ancient dreadnought crossed the galactic boundary and disappeared into the dark between galaxies, carrying with it the promise that wherever life existed, humanity would be there to protect it. The age of deception was over. The age of true partnership had begun. And somewhere in the depths of space, other sleeping giants waited to be awakened when they were needed most. For humanity's legacy was not just one galaxy, but the protection of all life everywhere, no matter the cost. The stars themselves seemed to shine brighter, as if celebrating the end of their long night of danger and the beginning of a new dawn of hope.